Hi, today I'm delighted to be joined by Jamie Lawson. Jamie has worked for Asda for over 10 years and as part of Feeding the Nation is one of our essential key workers. I'm delighted to be joined by Jamie. He's worked on huge projects for Asda, including implementing organisation development and design strategy, leading an HR and people function, and he's currently a senior manager for Head of Reward. So welcome, Jamie. Thanks very much for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about what your role is now, Jamie?
Yeah, so I'm currently senior manager of Reward. That's a role I've been in for just a few months. So I just started that at the start of the year. And as part of that, I am accountable for setting the pay and reward strategy for Asda. So everything from kind of core pay to the benefits that sit alongside that, whether it's things like shares or company cars. So really interesting role.
Fantastic. So some strange times for you at the moment. What's the impact of the COVID-19 crisis been on you?
So just thinking about kind of Asda generally, we've really had to work at pace to respond to the kind of ever evolving and changing challenges. And I think as a principle, we've always said that our priority will be protecting our customers and protecting our colleagues. We've got really robust continuity plans in place that have allowed us to respond to this situation quickly. And I think we've always followed the government advice and more in a lot of cases. You'll probably have seen as a customer some of the challenges that we've had to face in the last few months. And as a result of that, we've really had to transform the way that we operate our shops. Things like restricting opening hours, putting product limits in place. We've implemented measures to ensure that colleagues and customers adhere to social distancing. So it's probably fair to say the whole operational landscape has changed significantly. From an HR point of view, I think as the whole crisis escalated, we saw colleagues having to self-isolate, which resulted in significant volumes of absence that we've had to really work with pace to respond to and make very quick decisions on what our policies will be for things like people needing to self-isolate. Just to put some of that into context, we've recruited literally in the last few weeks an additional 15,000 colleagues to help our shops deliver customer shopping and keep the supply chain of product moving. Been a massive challenge, but we've risen to it. We've streamlined our recruitment processes literally overnight and put things in place to allow us to respond as quickly as possible. So we really quickly introduced a friends and family referral scheme that has been phenomenally successful and has allowed us to get people into work really quickly. I think, as I've said, we've been clear right from the outset that our priority is to protect our customers and our colleagues. And right from the very start, we've sought to do the right thing by our colleagues. So we announced kind of right at the very start of this pandemic that anyone that needed to self-isolate, we would pay in full. And similarly, we've gone beyond that and have announced that we'll pay in full anyone that needs to take 12 weeks shielding. And equally, anyone that lives with somebody that's extremely vulnerable and is having to take 12 weeks off, we're paying them their full contracted hours as well.
That's fantastic.
A slight change to our ways of working. We've got daily meetings in place to review kind of the ongoing situation just so that we can respond to things and make decisions as quickly as possible as this situation evolves. And alongside that, we've got a really strong communication loop so we can get feedback from the operation and put out new messages, new questions and answers, new policies as and when we need to. So that has been working really well.
So how are you looking after the well-being of your colleagues during this?
So that's something that is really important to us and we've been incredibly mindful of since this all started to unfold. And given the nature of our business, we've had to look at that from two angles. We've got a population of frontline workers that are running our shops, kind of working at the coalface as key workers. And similarly, we've got a population of head office colleagues that have now been working at home remotely for the last 5 weeks, which presents a different challenge in itself. So if I start with stores and depots, I think the first thing, as I mentioned, is we've put some really strict social distancing measures in place to help reduce contact, even from a customer point of view. So things like mobile scan and go, where you can go around the shop with your mobile phone, scan your products and pay through that as you leave the shop. We had that in a small number of shops 6 weeks ago, and we've now got that in every single shop in the business to reduce contact with colleagues. And we've also rolled out really quickly a programme to put a Perspex screen up at every till point in our shops, which you'll probably have seen if you're shopping in an Asda recently.
Yes, I used scan and go last week. It was very
excellent. Excellent. Probably another bit I'd just probably touch on is we are absolutely incredibly proud of the Asda heroes that are keeping our shops running and keeping the nation fed. And we know what an important role our people have in that bigger society picture. And we've been thinking about what kind of small gestures we can put in place to show our recognition and our gratitude for our people. So first thing, we've thought about how we can keep our workers fed that are feeding the nation. So for the last few weeks, we've had a programme in place that we rolled out really quickly, where we encouraged our shops to engage with local cafes, catering companies that may be impacted themselves by the crisis that we're in. And we've engaged them to provide catering for our colleagues during their shift for on the break. Secondly, we've also announced that we are going to pay all of our frontline colleagues an extra week's pay in June, just as a small thank you for what they're doing at this really difficult time. Not forgetting as well the people that we've got out of the business that are self-isolating. So we're really keen to maintain regular contact with those people, keep them connected to the business. So we're writing to them and sending out a newsletter that our executive team are feeding into on a regular basis, which we've had some really good feedback on. Thinking about the home office population, so our head office that I am part of, who have been working remotely for the last 5 weeks, there's probably a couple of things I'd just call out from that point of view. I think we've really had to embrace technology to keep connected with our team. So I have a daily video check-in with my team just to have a general catch-up, update them on what's happening in the business. And we're using things like Zoom, Workplace, like we've never done before, which has actually been quite successful in itself. Mm-hmm. And then we've really focused on the colleagues that are working from home, on their well-being. So supporting on things like making sure they're keeping active, looking after their mental health, because it is quite a difficult thing to do for a prolonged period of time.
Excellent. So obviously there's no end date in sight, but are you starting to make preparations for when life returns to normal? In fact, what is the new normal?
Yeah, we are. And I think probably the most exciting thing about that for me is understanding what the new normal will look like, because I think we'll learn a lot from this whole experience in terms of how we run a business, lead a team, and so on and so forth. So kind of in my industry, we've run our shops in a completely different way. We've opened less hours. We're selling things to a society who are having to eat every single meal from home at the minute, and running that from a head office that is working remotely. Mm-hmm. So we've really embraced agile principles kind of on a scale that we never 2 months ago thought would be possible. So I think for me, the learning we can take from this will improve our ways of working in the future.
Excellent. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us today. I know it's an incredibly busy time for you, but I think it's so important for us to share with the business community how people are handling the crisis, and especially guys like yourselves who are essential in feeding the nation. So thanks very much for joining us today.